The lights in the Galactic Council chamber dimmed as the holographic display flickered to life in the center of the vast circular room. Every representative from the 47-member species leaned forward in their seats, their various forms of eyes fixed on what appeared in the air before them. The creatures in the hologram were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. They moved like liquid silver through the air, their bodies stretching over 100 meters from snout to tail. Their scales weren't just white, they were the purest alabaster, catching light in ways that made them seem to glow from within. And their eyes. Those crimson eyes burned like dying stars, filled with an intelligence that made every council member's skin crawl. These were the albino dragons of Sanctuary 7, and they had become the galaxy's newest nightmare. Commander Thex stood at the center podium, his forearms shaking despite his best efforts to appear calm. The VRNN were known throughout the galaxy as one of the oldest and most composed species. They rarely showed emotion. But today, Thex looked like he'd aged a decade in the 3 cycles since his expedition to Sanctuary 7. "We lost 42 crew members," Thex said, his voice barely above a whisper. The chamber's acoustics carried his words to every corner. "Not to violence. Not to attacks. We lost them to fear." He pressed a button on the podium and the hologram shifted. Now it showed the interior of a spaceship, crew members of various species cowering in corners, some unconscious, others screaming. A few had literally torn through bulkheads trying to escape, despite being in the vacuum of space. "The dragons approached our ship," Thex continued. "They didn't attack. They simply existed near us. And that was enough. Every single member of my crew felt it. A terror so pure, so absolute, that our bodies simply shut down. Fight or flight stopped being options. We could only freeze and hope death would come quickly." The Kroth ambassador, a being that resembled a 7-foot-tall mantis made of living metal, stood up abruptly. "Commander Thex speaks truth," the warrior said, her voice like grinding gears. "My people sent our finest soldiers to investigate after the VRYNN expedition failed. We breed our warriors in combat arenas from birth. They know no fear of death." She paused, and when she spoke again, there was shame in her mechanical voice. "They ran. All of them. Screaming like hatchlings. 3 took their own lives rather than face the dragons again. We recovered their ships 6 light-years from Sanctuary 7. They had jumped to random coordinates, desperate to put distance between themselves and those creatures." The council chamber erupted in worried chatter. Representatives turned to their neighbors, speaking in dozens of languages. The universal translators built into the chamber struggled to keep up. The Council Prime, an ancient being whose species name was unpronounceable to most, raised one crystalline appendage for silence. "The decision is clear," the Prime said. "Sanctuary 7 will be designated as forbidden space. Red-level quarantine. No species will approach within 10 light-years of the planet. This is for our collective survival." 46 representatives signaled their agreement. Only one did not. Ambassador Roberts stood slowly. He was human, a species so new to the galactic community that many representatives still confused them with the Terralians or the primates of Sector 9. Roberts was a middle-aged man with graying hair and eyes that held a curiosity the other species found unsettling. "Forgive me," Roberts said, his voice calm and measured. "But has anyone actually tried talking to them?" The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Several representatives made sounds that their translators rendered as laughter, though it was tinged with nervousness. "Talk to them," the Kroth ambassador said. "Human, these creatures inspire such fear that even seeing a recording of them makes some species physically ill. They are death incarnate." "But have they actually killed anyone?" Roberts asked. "From what I'm hearing, they approached your ships. They were curious maybe. You ran. They didn't chase. They didn't attack. They just were." Commander Thex's voice rose with frustration. "You don't understand. The fear they project, it's not natural. It's psychic. It bypasses all rational thought. It makes you want to die rather than be near them." "Makes most species want to die," Roberts corrected gently. "Humans experience fear differently. Our brains are wired strangely. We're the species that decided to strap ourselves to controlled explosions just to see what was on the other side of our atmosphere. We're the ones who looked at the ocean, which kills us if we stay in it too long, and decided to sail across it anyway." The Council Prime's crystalline form seemed to dim. "What are you proposing, Ambassador?" "I'm not proposing anything," Roberts said with a slight smile. "I'm informing you. Humanity has already sent a research vessel to Sanctuary 7. It launched 2 weeks ago. Should arrive any day now." The chamber exploded in outrage. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. The Council Prime called for order repeatedly. Who did you send? The Kroth ambassador demanded. What warriors? What weapons? One scientist, Roberts replied calmly. Dr. Kate Miller. She's a xenopsychologist. And her 18-month-old daughter Lily. Plus a small crew to fly the ship. The silence that followed was absolute. You sent a baby? Commander Thex whispered. To face the White Terrors? We sent hope, Roberts said. Sometimes that's the bravest thing of all. The representatives looked at each other in disbelief. The consensus was clear. Humans were either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most foolishly insane. Possibly both. The bright hope shuddered as it entered Sanctuary VI's atmosphere. Through the main viewport, the planet below looked like something out of a dream. Massive crystal formations jutted up from the surface, some reaching miles into the sky. They caught the light of the system's twin suns and scattered it into rainbows that danced across the clouds. Dr. Kate Miller stood in the observation bay, her daughter Lily balanced on her hip. The baby was doing what babies do, drooling on Kate's shoulder and making happy babbling sounds while trying to grab at the colorful light streaming through the window. Behind them, the situation on the bridge was deteriorating rapidly. I can't do this, the pilot gasped. His name was Ven, a member of the Quilarian species known for their exceptional spatial awareness and steady nerves. Right now, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the controls. Dr. Miller, we need to abort. We need to leave. Now. Kate glanced back through the open doorway. She could see the bridge crew, all 6 of them from different alien species, and they all looked terrified. One was rocking back and forth in his seat. Another had her face buried in her hands. We're not even close to the dragons yet, Kate said gently. This is just the planet. You're scaring yourselves. With respect, Doctor, Ven said through clenched teeth, you're human. You don't feel it the way we do. This place, it's wrong. Everything in my body is screaming at me to run. Kate had read the reports. She knew what other expeditions had experienced. But standing here now, holding Lily, she felt nothing but a strange calm. Maybe the reports were exaggerated. Maybe humans really were built differently. Just a little longer, Kate said. If it gets too bad, we'll leave. I promise. She turned back to the viewport just as the ship's sensors began beeping frantically. Lily perked up at the sound, her little head turning this way and that, trying to find the source of the noise. Then Kate saw them. 3 shapes rose from behind a crystal mountain, moving through the air with a grace that should have been impossible for creatures so large. They were even more magnificent in person than the holograms had shown. The albino dragons looked like they'd been carved from pure moonlight, their white scales reflecting the rainbow light from the crystals below. The smallest of the 3 was still twice the size of the Bright Hope. The largest was easily 4 times bigger than their ship. Kate's breath caught in her throat. Not from fear but from sheer wonder. They were beautiful. The dragons began to circle the ship, spiraling around it in a complex aerial dance. Their movements were synchronized, purposeful. Kate grabbed her tablet with her free hand and started taking notes. This was hunting behavior, she thought at first. But no, there was something else. Something almost playful about the way they moved. Then it hit. The psychic wave crashed through the ship like a tsunami of pure terror. Kate gasped as she felt it wash over her, a pressure in her mind, heavy and overwhelming. It felt like standing in front of an oncoming train, every instinct screaming that death was seconds away. Behind her, she heard the bridge crew collapse. Bodies hitting the floor. Someone screaming. The emergency medical systems kicked in automatically, detecting the crew's vital signs spiking to dangerous levels. A soft hissing sound filled the air as sedative gas flooded the bridge. Kate grabbed the edge of the viewport to steady herself. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were sweaty. But she was still standing. Still conscious. The fear was there, yes, but it was manageable. Like being afraid of heights while standing on a tall building, uncomfortable but not debilitating. She looked down at Lily, worried about how the baby might be reacting to the psychic pressure. Lily was pressing both of her tiny hands against the viewport, leaving smudgy handprints on the clear material. Her eyes were huge and bright, tracking the movement of the dragons outside. And she was smiling. Not just smiling. Laughing. That pure, unself-conscious laugh that only babies can manage. The kind of laugh that comes from genuine delight, untainted by any knowledge of danger or fear. Da. Lily shouted, slapping her hand against the window. Da. Da. She wasn't saying dada. She was just making sounds the way babies do. But she was clearly trying to get the dragon's attention. And it worked. The largest dragon, the one leading the aerial dance, suddenly stopped mid-flight. Its enormous head turned toward the bright hope, toward the exact spot where Lily was pressed against the viewport. Kate held her breath. The dragon moved closer. Slow, careful movements now, not the sweeping circles from before. It approached the ship the way you might approach a butterfly, afraid of startling it into flight. Those crimson eyes, each one larger than Kate's entire body, focused on the observation bay window. On Lily. The baby laughed again and slapped the window harder. Ah-da-da-da. Kate watched in amazement as the dragon tilted its massive head, the gesture eerily similar to the way a dog might tilt its head when hearing an interesting sound. Then the dragon did something that made Kate's scientific brain almost short-circuit. It moved one of its enormous claws, a single talon the size of a sword, and gently tapped it against the ship's hull. Just once. A soft, careful tap. Lily squealed with absolute joy and hit the window in response. Tap tap tap. The dragon tapped back. Tap. Lily dissolved into giggles, banging on the window with both hands now. The dragon tapped again, matching the rhythm. Kate's hands were shaking as she fumbled with her tablet, making sure all the recording equipment was active. She could barely believe what she was witnessing. The dragons that had sent every other species fleeing in terror, the creatures designated as the galaxy's most dangerous unknown, were playing peekaboo with an 18-month-old human baby. And Lily, bless her fearless little heart, was having the time of her life. The largest dragon settled itself directly in front of the observation bay window, its massive body hovering effortlessly in the air. Kate could see every detail of its scales now. They weren't just white, but had an iridescent quality that made them shimmer with hints of blue and silver in the light. The creature moved with such deliberate care as it extended one claw toward the ship. The talon alone was as long as Kate was tall, curved and sharp enough to tear through the hull like paper. But the dragon's movements were gentle, controlled. It tapped the reinforced window with the very tip of its claw. A soft, almost musical ping echoed through the observation bay. Lily shrieked with happiness and smacked both her pudgy hands against the glass. The sound was nowhere near as elegant as the dragon's tap, just the wet slap of baby hands on transparent steel. The dragon waited a moment, then tapped twice. Ping ping. Lily bounced in Kate's arms, her whole body wiggling with excitement. She hit the window twice, trying to copy the pattern. Slap slap. Kate felt tears welling up in her eyes. She quickly set Lily down on the floor of the observation bay, making sure the baby was secure, and rushed to activate every piece of recording equipment she'd brought. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped her tablet twice. Behind her, she could hear the shallow breathing of the bridge crew. The sedative gas had done its job. They were alive but unconscious. Which meant Kate was the only person in the entire galaxy witnessing this moment with full awareness. She opened a communication channel to Earth, knowing the signal would take hours to reach home. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Mission log day 1. The dragons aren't hostile. I repeat, they are not hostile. They're playing with my daughter. Lily had figured out a new game. She'd press her face against the window, making her cheeks squish out, then pull back laughing. The dragon watched each movement with those intense crimson eyes, its head tilting at different angles as if trying to understand what this tiny creature was doing. Then the dragon moved its massive head closer and pressed what Kate assumed was its nose against the outside of the window. Lily went absolutely still for a moment, staring at the enormous eye that was now just inches away from her on the other side of the glass. The eye was bigger than the baby's entire body, with a vertical pupil that contracted and expanded as it focused on her. Kate held her breath. This was the moment. This was when Lily would finally realize how big and different and potentially scary this creature was. The baby reached out one small hand and placed it flat against the glass, right in front of the dragon's eye. Gentle, Lily whispered. It was one of the few words she knew, something Kate had been teaching her when petting their cat back home. The dragon's pupil expanded until the eye was almost entirely black. It pulled its head back slowly and made a sound, a low rumbling hum that Kate felt in her chest more than heard with her ears. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost like purring. Over the next 3 days Kate barely slept. She couldn't afford to miss a moment of what was happening. The bridge crew woke up eventually, still terrified, and Kate had to order them to stay in the sealed crew quarters. They were happy to comply. Meanwhile, Lily and the dragons had developed an entire routine. Each morning, when the twin suns rose and painted the crystal formations in gold and pink light, the dragons would return. There were always 3 of them at first. Kate had started thinking of them as the big one, the medium one, and the smaller one, though even the smallest was enormous. They developed a game of hide and seek. Kate would take Lily down to the ship's cargo bay, which had a large exterior door with a window. The dragons would fly behind the crystal mountains, and Lily would press her face to the glass waiting. When a dragon would suddenly swoop up from behind a crystal tower, Lily would squeal and clap. Then Lily would duck down below the window and the dragons would wait. When she popped back up, they'd tilt their heads and make that rumbling sound. On the fourth day, something new happened. The big one flew away for several hours. When it returned, it was carrying something in its claws. Kate watched through the external cameras as the dragon approached the ship. It landed on the crystalline ground nearby, the first time any of them had touched down since the Bright Hope arrived. The dragon carefully opened its claws and nudged something toward the ship with its snout. "What is that?" Kate whispered, zooming in the camera. It was a rock. But not just any rock. It was one of the crystal formations from the planet's surface, about the size of a basketball. And it was glowing from within, pulsing with soft blue and green light. The dragon looked at the ship, then at the crystal, then back at the ship. "It brought Lily a gift," Kate breathed. She suited up in a protective EVA suit and went outside, her heart pounding. The dragon watched her approach but didn't move. Up close, it was even more massive than she'd imagined. Its breathing sounded like wind through a canyon. Kate picked up the crystal. It was warm to the touch and surprisingly light. "Thank you," she said, knowing the dragon probably couldn't understand her words but hoping it might understand the tone. The dragon's eyes followed her as she carried the crystal back to the ship. When Kate brought it inside and showed it to Lily, the baby's face lit up. She reached for it immediately, and the crystal's glow intensified at her touch. That night, Kate sent another transmission to Earth. "They're not just intelligent. They're kind. The psychic presence that everyone interprets as fear. I think I understand it now. It's not an attack. It's who they are. They can't turn it off. Every species that's approached them has come with weapons, with fear already in their hearts. The dragon sensed that fear and it feeds back on itself, getting stronger." She looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, the glowing crystal clutched in her little arms like a teddy bear. But Lily doesn't know how to be afraid of them. To her, they're just big friends who play games and bring presents. And because she feels no fear, the dragons sense no threat. "We've been getting it wrong this whole time. They're not monsters. They've been waiting for someone to see them without fear. They're just lonely." Back on the Galactic Council station, in a monitoring room light years away, a dozen species watched the live feed in stunned silence. A human baby was sleeping peacefully with a gift from the galaxy's most terrifying creatures, while outside her window, 3 albino dragons kept watch like ancient guardians. By the end of the first week, the Bright Hope wasn't alone anymore. Kate stood at the observation window, watching the sky with a mixture of awe and disbelief. When they'd first arrived, there had been 3 dragons. Now there were dozens, maybe hundreds. They emerged from the massive crystal cave systems that honeycombed the planet's surface, rising into the air like white clouds given form and purpose. And every single one of them was heading toward the ship. "Should we be worried?" asked Ven from the doorway. The pilot had finally gotten brave enough to leave the crew quarters, though he still refused to come within 10 feet of any external window. "I don't think so," Kate said, making notes on her tablet. "Look at their formation. They're not swarming. They're queuing." It was true. The dragons had arranged themselves in a loose spiral around the ship, each one maintaining a respectful distance from the others. They were waiting their turn for something. Lily provided the answer by banging on the window and shouting, "Hi. Hi," at the top of her tiny lungs. The nearest dragon drifted closer, and Kate saw it was smaller than the big one she'd grown familiar with, probably a younger dragon. It tapped the window gently, and Lily went through her usual routine of giggles and hand slapping. "They're here to see her," Kate whispered. "They've been alone for so long, and now they've found someone who isn't afraid of them. They all want to meet her." Over the following days, Kate threw herself into research with an intensity that left her exhausted but exhilarated. She'd set up equipment throughout the ship to measure everything: psychic energy patterns, dragon movement behaviors, communication attempts. And slowly, carefully, a picture began to emerge. The albino dragons weren't just intelligent. They were ancient. Through careful observation and some experimental interaction with the big one, Kate discovered they could communicate psychically. Not with words exactly, but with concepts and feelings that her brain translated into understanding. What she learned broke her heart. The dragons had evolved their psychic presence millions of years ago as a defense mechanism. Their planet had once been home to massive predators that hunted in packs. The dragons' ancestors had developed the fear aura to survive. If predators were too terrified to approach, they couldn't attack. But as the dragons evolved higher intelligence and the predators went extinct, the defense mechanism remained. They couldn't turn it off. It was as much a part of them as their white scales or crimson eyes. As their intelligence grew, so did their need for social connection. They were deeply social creatures who lived in complex family groups, who created art in the form of crystal sculptures, who had developed a civilization built around philosophy and knowledge rather than technology. But they were prisoners of their own biology. Every species that had ever evolved on their world eventually developed space travel and left, unable to bear the psychic weight of living near the dragons. The dragons themselves had never developed space flight, not because they couldn't, but because why would they? They could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, and they had no desire to inflict their presence on other worlds. So they waited, alone, for millions of years. They stored their knowledge in the crystals Kate discovered. The glowing formations weren't just rock, they were living data storage containing everything the dragons had learned over their long history. Music, mathematics, philosophy, star charts, biological studies of extinct species. All of it preserved in crystal, waiting for someone who could access it. Waiting for someone who wasn't afraid to try, Kate murmured, watching Lily play with her crystal gift. When the baby touched it, images sometimes flickered through Kate's mind, nothing clear but feelings and impressions. Joy. Hope. Welcome. She sent her full report to the Galactic Council, including every measurement, every observation, every carefully documented interaction. And she included video. The video that changed everything showed Lily at 2 weeks into their stay. The big one had landed on a flat crystal plane outside the ship, and Kate had, against every safety protocol in the book, taken Lily outside in a specially modified EVA suit. The dragon had lowered its massive head to the ground. Lily had walked right up to it and patted its snout. Then the dragon had done something extraordinary. It had lifted its head slightly, creating a small hollow between its skull and neck, and looked at Kate with what could only be described as an invitation. Kate had placed Lily in that hollow, and the dragon had risen into the air. The video showed a laughing toddler riding on the head of a dragon the size of a building, soaring through canyons of crystal that threw rainbow light in every direction. Lily's squeals of delight echoed off the formations. The dragon flew with such careful precision, making sure every movement was smooth, every turn gentle. They flew for an hour, and when the dragon landed, Lily had fallen asleep against its warm scales, completely peaceful. The Galactic Council's response came back faster than Kate had expected. Ambassador Roberts appeared on the communication screen, and even light years away, Kate could see he was trying not to cry. Dr. Miller, the Council has voted unanimously. Humanity is to establish formal diplomatic relations with the dragons immediately. They're asking, he paused, wiping his eyes. They're asking for families. Volunteers who would be willing to bring their children to live on Sanctuary 7. To help the dragons reconnect with the galaxy. Kate looked out at the dozens of dragons circling the ship, all waiting patiently for their chance to play simple games with Lily, to feel what it was like to be seen without fear. Tell them yes, she said. Tell them we're coming home. But that night, as Kate sat in the observation bay with Lily asleep in her lap and the big one floating just outside the window like a guardian, she realized something profound. Through all her research, through all the data and measurements and careful scientific observation, the most important discovery hadn't come from her at all. It had come from an 18-month-old baby who simply didn't know that some things were supposed to be scary. Lily had looked at the most feared creatures in the galaxy and seen friends. And in doing so, she'd given an entire species hope for the first time in millions of years. Sometimes, Kate thought, humanity's greatest strength wasn't intelligence or bravery or technology. It was the simple, powerful ability to look at the unknown and feel wonder instead of fear. 6 months had passed since the Bright Hope first landed on Sanctuary 7. The planet had a new name now, Haven. And it had become something nobody in the galaxy could have predicted. Kate stood on a platform built into one of the massive crystal formations, looking out over what had become humanity's newest settlement. Prefabricated habitat modules dotted the crystal plains below, their metallic surfaces reflecting the rainbow light. Solar panels and communication arrays stretched toward the sky. Gardens were growing in specially prepared soil, bringing earth plants to this alien world. But the most remarkable sight was the children. Dozens of human families had volunteered to come to Haven, and their kids were everywhere. Toddlers chased each other around the crystal formations while dragons the size of houses watched over them like patient grandparents. Older children sat in groups, learning to interpret the psychic impressions the dragons used to communicate. Teenagers had organized games that involved both species, elaborate versions of tag that took place across 3 dimensions as the dragons flew and the humans climbed the crystal structures. And everywhere there was laughter. Human laughter mixing with the deep, rumbling sounds the dragons made when they were content. It's beautiful, isn't it? Kate turned to find Jack Peterson, one of the settlement's administrators, standing beside her. He was a father of 3 who'd been among the first volunteers. It really is, Kate agreed. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. My youngest asked me yesterday why the dragons were sad, Jack said. I asked her what she meant and she said she could feel it sometimes. Like they were happy now, but underneath there was this old sadness. Kate nodded. She'd felt it too in her deeper psychic connections with the big one, the dragon Lily had named Snowy. Millions of years of loneliness didn't disappear in 6 months. But it was healing. Slowly. Where is Lily, by the way? Jack asked. Kate pointed to a clearing about half a mile away. Even from this distance, they could see the small figure of a 2-year-old running in circles while a massive white dragon lay curled on the ground, its head tracking the child's movements. Same place she always is, Kate said with a smile. With Snowy. Lily had become something of a legend, not just on Haven but across the entire galaxy. The first human to play with a dragon. The child who changed everything. News networks from 47 different species had broadcast her story. There were songs about her in languages Kate couldn't pronounce. But Lily herself had no idea about any of that. To her, Snowy was just her friend. The big dragon who played games with her, who let her nap against his warm scales, who brought her pretty crystals and made funny rumbling sounds that made her giggle. It was this exact innocence that made everything work. The Galactic Council was in session right now, actually. A special meeting to discuss Haven's future. Kate could see the live feed on her tablet. Representatives from all the member species gathered in their massive chamber. Ambassador Roberts stood at the central podium. Behind him, on the main view screen, was a live video feed from Haven. It showed Lily curled up against Snowy's foreleg, taking an afternoon nap. The dragon's wing was partially extended over her, providing shade from the bright suns. Members of the council, Roberts was saying, his voice carrying across space to reach Kate's tablet, humanity proposes that Haven become a neutral ground. A place of learning and cultural exchange open to all species. There was murmuring among the representatives. Kate could see some of them shifting uncomfortably. The idea of visiting the dragon world still terrified most species, even with all the evidence that the dragons meant no harm. The dragons possess knowledge spanning millions of years, Roberts continued. Science, philosophy, art, mathematics, all preserved in the crystal formations of their world. They want to share this knowledge. They've been waiting to share it. They just needed someone who could get close enough to listen. He paused, letting that sink in. Humanity will serve as intermediaries. Our natural resistance to the dragon's psychic presence, combined with our children's fearless curiosity, makes us uniquely suited for this role. Any species that wishes to study with the dragons can do so, with human guides to help manage the initial contact. The Croth ambassador stood up, the same one who'd spoken at that first meeting 6 months ago. And what does humanity gain from this arrangement? She asked, her mechanical voice suspicious. Robert smiled. The same thing everyone else gains. Knowledge, understanding, and the honor of helping reconnect an ancient, wise species with the wider galaxy. He gestured to the screen behind him where Lily was starting to wake up. The toddler yawned, stretched, and then patted Snowy scales affectionately. The dragon's eye opened and that deep rumbling sound came through the speakers. Humanity brings something unique to the galactic community, Robert said quietly. Not superior weapons. Not advanced technology. But something simpler and maybe more valuable. We teach our children to reach out before they learn to pull back. To explore before they understand the danger. To see wonder before they learn fear. Some species call it recklessness. His smile widened. We call it hope. The vote was unanimous. Haven would become a protected neutral zone, administered jointly by humanity and the dragons, open to all species for peaceful study and cultural exchange. Back on Haven, Kate watched the vote results come through on her tablet. She felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. Below her, Lily had woken up fully and was now playing with a group of young dragons. Hatchlings, really, though each one was still the size of an elephant. They were playing some elaborate game that seemed to involve the dragons hiding behind crystals while Lily counted, her little voice carrying across the plain. 27, 28, 29, ready or not, here I come. The galaxy had spent millions of years running from the albino dragons, seeing them as terrors to be avoided at all costs. It had taken one human baby, reaching out with nothing but wonder and trust and a desire to play, to show everyone what they'd been missing all along. Kate thought about humanity's journey to the stars. They weren't the strongest species. They weren't the smartest or the oldest or the most advanced. But they had something special, a stubborn refusal to let fear win. A tendency to look at the unknown and feel excited rather than terrified. A habit of teaching their children to be curious before teaching them to be careful. In the end, that was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or conquest, but the simple, powerful ability to see monsters and ask, "Would you like to play?"